Albert, run a little bit of where Kamala Harris was yesterday, if you would, because she was busy with. Go ahead. This is a little bit for Anthony Davis.
Vice President Harris in battleground Pennsylvania, drilling down on her vision for the economy in her first one-on-one national TV interview since becoming the Democratic nominee, speaking with MSNBC's Stephanie Rule.
And I'm not mad at anybody for being rich, but they should pay their fair share.
On the campaign trail pushing her economic policy, Harris slammed former President Trump as a friend of billionaires, not hardworking Americans.
He's only interested in making life better for himself and people like himself, the wealthiest of Americans.
Polls show most likely voters still believe Trump is better equipped to handle the economy. Trump in North Carolina blasting Harris, saying prices remain way too high.
Kamala goes to work every day in the White House. Families are suffering now. So if she has a plan, she should stop grandstanding and do it. Just do it.
Responding to calls for more policy specifics, the Harris campaign released an 80-page economic blueprint Wednesday, including child tax credits and housing payments. Harris was asked how she would pay for those elements.
If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share.
Trump also targeting the Biden-Harris administration's foreign policy ahead of Harris and President Biden's scheduled visit with Ukraine's president today, criticizing Volodymyr Zelensky for his handling of the war.
Those cities are gone. They're gone. And we continue to give billions of dollars to a man who refuses to make a deal. Zelensky, you have a country that has been obliterated, not possible to be rebuilt.
And here at the White House today, Zelensky is expected to present his
Thank you, Albert. That's enough. Zelensky's going to meet with Biden. I'm curious what you think of what parts of Kamala Harris's pushback. I like, for example, the calling out of Trump being friend to essentially billionaire and corporate interests. I like that. I think they should hammer that more. I think they should hammer corruption more. I mean, he is an openly corrupt guy, and if you look at his history, even as president, it was corrupt. Now, I don't know what part of this you should amplify, but I like that at least it was referenced in her conversation. How about you?
I think anybody who thinks that Donald Trump would be better for the economy than Kamala Harris has been brainwashed into it's a confidence trick. It's not real. Donald Trump is a failed businessman who got famous on The Apprentice. He doesn't know anything about the economy. He doesn't know anything about world markets. He doesn't know anything about international trade. The guy is a fraud. And if you can't tell that from the way he speaks, saying that he's going to put a 20% tariff on all exports from other countries, like he doesn't understand how it works. And he did this previously in his administration, and it raised the national debt. It did nothing for the economy. He is economically and morally bankrupt. And it's not about, is Kamala Harris going to be better on the economy? She is. The Democrats don't operate in isolation like Donald Trump does, right? Trump is going to be like, it's my way or the highway. Slap a 200% tariff on it, and that'll sort it out, right? No understanding of the minutiae or the detail. Kamala Harris will be surrounded by the best people she can find. So you're not voting for Kamala Harris. You're voting for a mindset. You're voting for delegation. You're voting for a movement in Kamala Harris. She is the figurehead, but she's not a despot. Whereas with Donald Trump, you're not voting for anybody else. You're literally voting for one crazy man. And so this is what you get. The package, when it comes to the economy or anything else for that matter, under the Democrats, is about buying into an ideal, a system whereby you do the right thing is done. And yeah, people that, if they took in all the tax that they should have done from millionaires and billionaires, then everything could be paid for. Universal health care, free education, you could cover all of it if the billionaires paid their fair share. But unfortunately, again, in the US, there's this each to their own type of attitude. That this idea of collective responsibility and sharing the wealth. I mean, some people believe in it. Bill Gates believes in it, right? He gives huge amounts of his money away. And he's still got plenty of money. Look at Warren Buffett. He only pays himself $100,000 a year. He doesn't need any more money than that, right? And so, unfortunately, these people, George Soros is another one. These people have been, immigrants invariably with George Soros, made an awful lot of money, came here from Eastern Europe, and then decided that he wanted to put it back into the system. He only needed so much for himself. How rich do these people need to be, for goodness sake? So I'm not into, building rockets that look like penises and taking your brother into space and wasting money on that kind of stuff. I really genuinely believe that if there is a surplus of money, nobody should be on the street. Nobody should be struggling to pay these student fees or student debts, and nobody should be having to pay for healthcare. We can completely afford it. The system is we are so overwhelmed with wealth in the United States. The whole story of, we can't afford it and there's too many people coming in and, you got to pay your way and you got to pull up your bootstraps. It's all of that is propaganda. It is not based in reality.
When the mainstream media asks Kamala Harris about the economy, she should reference Nikki Haley, DeSantis, etc. Play the GOP tearing to shreds on economic, healthcare, etc., says No Contendo. Yeah, it is true, and that's kind of what you've just said. You've said, if you compare and contrast in any kind of reasonable way. Somebody else had mentioned, I think it was up there on the screen for a moment, the fact that, here, Vicky in Tiburon says, I don't understand why Harris doesn't emphasize, quote, how can you trust Trump with the economy if he doesn't even understand how the tariffs he's proposing will hurt the economy? Yeah. It's a brilliant point.
He can't answer any question on his own policies because he doesn't have any. It's a bit like his healthcare plan that was, yes, we're working on it, it's coming in 2 weeks. It never showed up because there isn't one. It's a confidence trick. The whole thing with him is about him trying to stay out of prison. And the other day...
But the key is that he has seized control of one of America's major political parties, and there are only two of them.
Yes.
And in so doing, the connective tissue between those people and that party and the machine that is amplifying and propagandizing for them. I'm talking about Fox News Channel. I'm talking about all the right-wing radio stations.
They gave remarkable. It to him.
Yes.
The GOP they could have impeached him twice and ratified it in the Senate, and they didn't. They gave him their party. He can't seize anything. The guy doesn't have the skills to seize anything.
They saw him as an instrument to gain power, though, don't you think, Anthony Davis? That's why they gave it to him.
Yeah, but the short-sightedness is that Donald Trump is a lifelong criminal, and they should know that. So what they're doing is they're endorsing criminality. They're now endorsing a convicted felon. They're now endorsing an adjudicated rapist. They're now endorsing somebody who took away a woman's right to choose. They have put their eggs into the Donald Trump basket.
Sure.
And this, my good friend, is why he is going to lose in November by quite a large margin. And it's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people because the polling says 50-50. But there's so much influence now. Foreign meddling, Russia is full steam ahead, Elon Musk full steam ahead. They make you think that the race is neck and neck. And I am putting my cards on the table and saying that he is going to lose by quite a significant margin. And then he will contest it, and then there will be a whole other, January 6th, another version of that. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but it's going to be very messy in the next 40-odd days.
Well, on your way out, and it's an interesting notion that we have about the Electoral College. There was a major story that we featured actually in our thumbnail today, which is that despite the notion and the accepted wisdom that the Republicans have an electoral college edge just going in other words, the Democrats, in a sense, have to overperform because of the electoral college edge that was ironclad for so long, that might be fading, according to a new breakdown that I was reading about in the New York Times. I mean, and it's quite extraordinary that there's really a shrinking advantage that the GOP has. So, to your point, there might be some surprises because, A, as you said, the propaganda machine is telling you one thing about how close it is. Now, I still think it feels as though it is still very close. Yeah. But more to the point, the tipping point that you'll need in key states is far more reachable for the Democrats than it is for the Republicans, is the point of this piece.
And also, 51 or 52% of the electorate are women, and this is really a woman's first chance to really tell the establishment what they think about the reversal of Roe versus Wade, which is going to be, it's forget all this stuff about, states, it's gone back to the states where it should always have been. That is going to be, if he gets in, that is going to be, enshrined into federal law. And so, people know that this stuff is coming. I don't think the American people are as stupid as Donald Trump thinks they are. Right.
Well, they were stupid enough once in 2016. I will say that the women came out in large numbers and in the midterms really did make their voices heard. So, But you're right. For top of ticket, this is the first time for them to slap back.
We need to hear from more people like Mark Cuban, and there are plenty of them, to really make the point that the whole concept of trickle-down economics is a fake notion created by conservatives and business people to make you think that if you give tax breaks to the rich, to the employers, it'll trickle down to the workers, and there is no evidence to support that. And Mark Cuban's done it with this pharmacy that he's created, right? He's kind of decided to take all of the profit out of drugs, and he said we're only going to make $5 on each transaction. So he basically is being completely transparent. He says we need $5 to run this business. That's all the profit that we need. Well, I just think people need to recognize that it is corrupt to make as much money as these businesses do when everybody else is struggling. And so it's time to start calling it out, and Kamala Harris is doing that. And I do think that there should be rules on how much profit you can make. I believe in a free market economy, but not to the extent that you can make billions and billions and billions of dollars and not pay an equivalent share.
Well, that's the point. I don't mind. I don't think there should be a cap, but I think that it should be taxable. I mean, the system has enabled your wealth.
Yes.
Look at it that way and feel better about writing that check. It is absolutely,
Do you know much about universal taxation as a concept? It's a bit like universal basic income, where all tax is 10%. You've read any studies on this?
Milton Friedman made it famous with the 15% across the board tax.
It's interesting.
Yeah, but it actually
simplifies the code.
It does, but it's very tough on the lower income part of the spectrum.
But they would be given rebates, apparently. That's also built into the system.
Right.
So actually, and also, here's the other caveat to this flat rate, 10%, 15%, is that if you earn under a certain amount, and I think the figure was around 30 or 40 or 50,000, you don't pay any tax at all.
Ah.
Right? So if you earn under, let's say it's 50 grand. If you earn less than 50 grand, you pay no tax. Above 50 grand, you'll pay 10% or 15% on everything above 50 grand, but that first 50,000 is yours.
Yeah,
it's
interesting. I know that it is interesting and provocative. I mean, the Milton Friedman thing is my only real experience with it, but I would say one of the problems, I'll just say this. If you make more, you should pay more in the way of taxes. I have no issue with that. The problem is that the tax code is built that if you make more, you have lawyers that can figure out ways to avoid paying more. Albert, play the Mark Cuban thing, if you would, please.
Donald Trump wants to threaten companies. We saw him threaten John Deere with a 200% tariff. That doesn't do anything to make John Deere's business better. In fact, it makes it easier for Chinese companies to compete with John Deere even after a 10 or 20% tariff. What did Kamala Harris say? She says she's going to incent companies to grow and build. She's going to offer tax incentives. She's going to make it easier to borrow money, the things that companies need to grow. So one is a hammer and the other is a carrot, right? How do we help businesses grow? That's such a stark difference. The other huge difference between the two, Donald is just so impetuous. He's so impulsive in everything he says about policy. You can tell that the Kamala Harris team has vetted every single thing she said. Not just does it sound good, does it poll good, but really is it good, strong policy? When I talked to her, the key message she gave to me was, these are policies that we've really thought hard about, that are important to me. We want to make them work. She's not just a sales rep just saying what she thinks the customer might want to hear. She's a good CEO who says, we need to do this right because I'm responsible to my stakeholders and we need to make sure we do it the right way. You could not have a greater difference between two candidates.
That's true. So that's Cuban, and I thought that was really good. That was the first part. Play me the second part now, Albert, which I also want to just share quickly with Anthony and everybody here. Go ahead.
The Harris campaign as a company, and Kamala is the CEO.
Right? He looks at her that way.
45 days, 60 days to build an entire organization. And you look at the results. She went from negative favorability ratings. She went from recognition being relatively low. She went from being way behind in every single poll you looked at. And now look where she's at. Worst case, she's tied. And in many cases, she's ahead. When you're able to turn around a battleship like a presidential campaign and go from being way behind to tied or ahead, you're doing a lot right. And on the flip side, if you had what seemed like an insurmountable lead, and now you've given up that entire lead to another CEO, you're getting fired. Right. So I think that's the beautiful part of looking at what she's doing. She's run her campaign like a CEO. She's had success. And when I go to talk to business people, that's what I tell them. She's actually running her organization like a CEO. And that's the evidence that you need to know that she'll be a great leader, that she understands business, that she understands organizations, and she'll be a friend and partner to business across the board.
So there you go. I just thought that was very well put, and it summarizes essentially a lot of what we talk about, which is one guy's about the grift and about BS and about sales, and somebody else is actually trying to cobble together policy and staff and at the same time put together a campaign that has its act together. And Harris's campaign, you can say what you want about Harris. Maybe she doesn't float everybody's boat, but wow, she has really done an awful lot in an extremely short time.
I don't think any business person who understands the world economy is going to vote for Donald Trump. They're just not, Republican or Democrat. Who really understands how they're going to benefit going forward. They know that Donald Trump is going to crash the U.S. and the world economy with his plans. So they're just not going to vote for him. So that lot are out. But traditionally you think, oh, well, of course, business people are going to vote conservative. Those days are over. Stuff like that can't happen in a post-Trump world. It's not possible. Donald Trump has hijacked the GOP. All that stuff about them being fiscally responsible has gone out of the window. Kamala Harris is a much better bet. It's frustrating for me to see someone talk about America as a business and about, I suppose he was talking more about the Kamala Harris campaign and her being a CEO. I understand the comparison. You cannot run a country like a business. And this is really the biggest kind of misnomer, isn't it? And I'm sure you've pointed it out to people before. It's like a country with people in it who don't work for the country. It's not a business. It shouldn't make a profit. That's
the point. When I used to hear Trump say, "Well, we're losing so much money on." Hey, dude! It's not about making money on everything. You may lose money on a lot of things. Yeah. You're, as you say, you're providing for people who live here.
It's a very different way of thinking, and this is why my late father used to say this, I vote conservative because, I want people who understand business running the country. And I used to say to him, that is the most dumbest argument I have ever heard, right? We didn't get on that well, you can probably understand now. But, it makes no sense to me because this country or that country or any country is not a business. And the countries that are doing the best, the countries that have the best systems, the systems of social safety nets and healthcare where everybody's doing well, have high taxation for the rich and universal everything for everybody else. And look at them. Look at Sweden. Look at Norway. Look at these countries that have really thought about it, and then look at the quality of life index and see that those countries are also in the top 10. And the US is down the bottom. It really is, for all of these things, for healthcare, for quality of life, but also for education as well.
If you looked at your country as a family, which I think is not an unreasonable way to look at it,
Yeah.
you wouldn't say, well, look, I want to send the kids to school, but I don't make any money on that. I mean, that's a total loser. In private school, I'm losing just way too much money on that. I want to get the kids health care, but they'll probably recover on their own. And I just, it's just too, it's absurd. You need to take care of your family, and then your family will live happy and healthfully, and as you suggest, will feed back into your household. And that's what happens in a robust economy.
But they are still capitalist countries. Capitalism is too far gone, right? You can't reverse capitalism. America will never be anything other than a capitalist country. And I am a capitalist, and the UK is a capitalist country, but it is also a social democracy. And people need to understand that two things can coexist. Two things can be correct. It's not binary. It's not, we're gonna end up living in, kind of Hugo Chavez's America. It's not. It doesn't work like that. These systems can coexist quite comfortably. You just have to have people in charge who recognize that fairness needs to be the thing that you base all of your policies on fairness.
Charlie says in the chat, China has 8-story malls. USA has closed ghost malls. China has high-speed trains. USA has none. China is a bad example, Charlie, because for comparison, because labor is super cheap, and you have essentially, it's not a comparable situation. China is it's a despotic regime, and it's just not fair. You can't look at anything that involves labor and look at China. I don't think it's fair to compare America to China in most any way. I'm not saying that there aren't still some instructive aspects of Chinese life, what they're doing. I love that they're out in front on green energy, but even as they're doing that, they're building these huge coal plants.
Well, they say they are. They're not really. And China is a bad example because they lie.
There's that.
They tell lies, so that their propaganda is built into their state media. So I would never use China as an example of a system to replicate.
Right.
I use Scandinavian countries in the main to point to those systems because I've been there and I've seen how they operate. And I also don't think much of China's human rights record. But at the same time, we still need to change our mindset to thinking that it is not possible for people to still get rich, still have great lives, but also offer universal healthcare and universal education and have a social safety net and where everybody can benefit. The only thing you need to do is reduce some of the profit on the wealthiest organizations that have, shareholders is the problem, isn't it? Those dividends and
and that's the problem with We've got to wrap up, but the capitalist model needs to show you increasing bottom line every quarter, and that is not possible in a lot of instances, unless you end up with a situation of the sort that we have, where you have stock buybacks and essentially a system that's eating itself, capitalism and corporate entities that are begin to eat themselves. They shed themselves of all kinds of investment, of employees, of infrastructure, and that's how they show a greater bottom line. Love talking to you, and I love this. Yeah, there it is, 100, Anthony, right on. Cassandra, and this from Mike and Willow Glen. Anthony Davis always gives an interesting point of view. Great guest. We love having you here, and we look forward to the next visit. We've been posting a 5-Minute News as the place to find you in the Midas Touch Network as well. And you're my boyfriend, and I will look forward to our next date.
I cherish the relationship. I really do. I feel like I'm cheating on my wife, but, that's fine.
Anthony, thank you. Farewell, sir.
Thank you so much.
Our favorite Britisher goes off into the sunset. Very, very well done. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.